Welcome back to Blue Jays Focus. The Toronto Blue Jays were set to open a four-game series against the Chicago White Sox on Thursday afternoon, but Mother Nature had other ideas. The White Sox announced Wednesday that their home opener at Rate Field, originally scheduled for 3:10 p.m. Thursday against the defending American League champion Blue Jays, has been postponed to Friday, April 3rd, with first pitch now set for 1:10 p.m. CT. The culprit is a powerful storm system pushing through Chicago, bringing with it heavy rain, strong winds, and the threat of hail that made playing conditions not just uncomfortable, but genuinely unsafe for the kind of baseball both teams intend to play this series. All tickets for Thursday's postponed game, including prepaid parking passes, stadium club access, ballpark pass tickets, and patio seating, are valid for Friday's rescheduled contest. No exchanges are necessary. The broadcast remains in place on Chicago Sports Network and ESPN Chicago Radio, AM 1000 or FM 100.3 HD2. The postponement has the added effect of converting what would have been a scheduled off day for both clubs into a travel and preparation buffer, which the Blue Jays, still managing the fallout from Cody Ponce's ACL sprain earlier this week, could certainly use. Friday's rescheduled opener carries the added ceremonial element of Chance the Rapper throwing out the first pitch, a pop culture moment that Chicago media had been building toward all week before the storm system disrupted the original timeline. The White Sox confirmed that arrangement holds for Friday's game. For a franchise that has spent the better part of the last few seasons fighting for relevance against the backdrop of a full-scale rebuild, having a cultural figure of that magnitude anchor the home opener says something about the energy the organization is trying to cultivate heading into 2026. It should be a raucous Rate Field crowd and one that now has an extra day's anticipation behind it. It is worth noting the historical footnote here. The last time the White Sox had their home opener postponed was in 2017. That game was played the following day and resulted in a 6-3 loss to the Detroit Tigers. Chicago finished that year with a 67-95 record, fourth in the American League Central, deep in the early phases of the teardown that eventually produced the rebuild now reaching its latest iteration. The parallels between then and now are imperfect but instructive. The White Sox enter 2026 at 1-4 after a 1-5 road trip to open the season, struggling in most facets of the game except one. And that one exception happens to be the most compelling storyline in baseball through the first week of the young season. Munetaka Murakami is the reason Rate Field opens with genuine buzz despite the record, and his presence at the heart of the White Sox lineup gives this four-game series against Toronto a dimension that goes well beyond standings implications. Signed to a 2-year, $34 million contract this past offseason after establishing himself as one of the most prolific power hitters in the history of Japanese professional baseball, Murakami has delivered on his promise with a force that has left even the most skeptical analysts reaching for superlatives. He hit a home run in each of his first 3 major league games, becoming just the 4th player in MLB history to accomplish that feat, joining Chase DeLauter in the same 2026 class alongside Kyle Lewis and Trevor Story from recent seasons. That is not a small sample size fluke. That is a man who crosses oceans with his talent intact. The backstory on Murakami is worth sitting with. He spent 8 seasons in Japan's Nippon Professional Baseball League, primarily with the Tokyo Yakult Swallows, and accumulated 246 career home runs before arriving stateside. His 2022 campaign alone, 56 home runs, breaking Sadaharu Oh's record for the most long balls by a Japanese player in a single season, is one of the most legendary individual offensive performances in NPB history. He was Japan's Word of the Year that season, given the nickname Murakami-sama by a fan base that watched him do things at the plate that seemed to require divine intervention. The man hit 30 or more home runs in 5 of his 8 NPB seasons. The power is not a projection. It is a documented, multi-year reality. What scouts questioned heading into his MLB transition was the strikeout rate, which climbed from 21% in 2022 to 30% by 2025, along with concerns about his defense, given that he primarily played third base in Japan and was transitioning to first base in the American game. Neither concern has materialized as a disqualifying issue through the first week. Murakami walked 4 times in his first 3 games against Milwaukee pitching, including a pair of full-count walks against Brewers ace Jacob Misiorowski, one of the nastiest arms in the NL, while also posting a 22% chase rate that suggests his strike zone discipline is translating under big league pressure. White Sox manager Will Venable has already moved him from 6th to 4th to 2nd in the batting order as his confidence in the 26-year-old has grown game by game. "He's controlling the zone," Venable said. "He's hitting the ball hard. Defensively, he's done well. He's running extremely hard. He's doing everything we ask him to do." The White Sox collective numbers away from Murakami remain alarming. The team posted a .192 batting average through 6 games on the road, allowed a .319 batting average against their pitchers, which ranked worst in baseball, and was outscored 52-21 on their opening road trip. Those are franchise-level deficiencies that one player cannot single-handedly solve. But Murakami is not being asked to solve everything. He is being asked to be a cornerstone around which the rebuild can be built, and so far, the foundation is cracking in the right places, with power. Now place the Blue Jays into that equation. Toronto arrives in Chicago, having gone 3-1 at home against the Athletics and Rockies, with a pitching staff already managing significant injury attrition. Cody Ponce suffered a sprained ACL in his right knee during Monday's series opener against Colorado and is now on the 15-day injured list, with the organization openly acknowledging that significant time is the most honest forecast they can offer. That is a brutal early-season blow for a pitcher who signed a 3-year, $30 million deal this past offseason after spending 3 seasons pitching in Japan and Korea, only to get hurt in the 3rd inning of his first major league appearance since 2021. The Blue Jays recalled Lázaro Estrada from AAA Buffalo in a corresponding move, continuing to tax a rotation depth chart already stretched by the absences of Shane Bieber with a forearm issue and Trey Yesevich's shoulder. The rotation piece that matters most for this series, however, is not who is missing. It is who is arriving. Dylan Cease was pushed back a day by Thursday's postponement, meaning the Blue Jays' Friday start at Wright Field belongs to him. And if there was ever a start circled on the calendar for a pitcher making his first appearance in a building where he spent 5 formative seasons of his career, this is it. Cease spent the entirety of his first 5 MLB seasons with the White Sox, from his 2019 debut through the 2023 season, developing from a promising hard thrower into one of the most dominant strikeout pitchers in the American League before being traded to San Diego ahead of the 2024 season. He then signed with Toronto this past offseason on the largest free agent contract in Blue Jays history, a 7-year, $210 million deal that signals the organization's intent to sustain its championship window well into the next decade. Cease enters Friday's start having not yet faced the White Sox as an opponent, as the team whose uniform he wore for his entire early MLB career remained the one organization he had not squared off against through his time with San Diego. That changes Friday afternoon on the South Side. The narrative writes itself. The man who grew up professionally on this mound, who logged 669 strikeouts as a White Sox, who was traded away and transformed himself into an ace at Petco Park, returning now in a Toronto uniform, carrying a $210 million investment on his right shoulder. Chicago will boo. The Rogers Center faithful who have adopted him will be watching every pitch on their devices. And Murakami, who will likely see Cease 2 or 3 times Friday, presents perhaps the most compelling individual matchup of the early season. The NPB legend facing the former White Sox ace, now a Blue Jay, in the South Siders home opener. From a pure tactical standpoint, the Blue Jays pitching staff has reasons to be confident walking into this series. Cease has been working on a refined head movement adjustment during his delivery, a subtle peek toward third base before looking home, which he says was solving a mechanical tendency to yank and cut the ball during his otherwise disappointing 2025 with San Diego, where he went 8-12 with a 4.55 ERA. Whether that adjustment has fully taken hold in meaningful regular season action remains to be seen, but the spring reports were encouraging, and his first start of 2026, originally slated for Thursday, is the genuine test. Meanwhile, the White Sox offense outside of Murakami has been inconsistent enough that Toronto's pitching depth, battered as it is, still matches up favorably against a lineup still figuring out its identity. That identity question is not entirely answered by Murakami's presence, impressive as it has been. The White Sox lineup around him features shortstop Colson Montgomery, who hit a second career grand slam in the final game of the Milwaukee series, suggesting a level of emerging production that Chicago sorely needs. There is also Luisangel Acuna, the younger brother of Ronald Acuna Jr., who is one of the few other players on the roster who entered 2026 with legitimate First Division potential. But the team's collective performance on the road, outscored by 31 runs in 6 games, makes clear that the process of building something at Rate Field is going to take time, even with Murakami at the center of it. For the Blue Jays, the subplot of this series that deserves attention is what a healthy 4-game stretch in Chicago could do for their own early season rhythms. Toronto's offense has found its footing despite the pitching injuries, with Jesus Sanchez hitting .462 through 4 games and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. reaching base in 12 of his first 22 plate appearances. The lineup has production distributed across the card in a way that doesn't depend on any single bat getting hot. And that kind of depth is essential when the rotation is in emergency management mode. If the Blue Jays can take 3 of 4 in this series against a White Sox club that has already shown its floor on the road, they will emerge from the first week of the season with a record and a rotation situation that, while imperfect, is entirely manageable. The postponement itself, while administratively disruptive, may ultimately benefit the Blue Jays as much as it inconveniences them. An extra day off allows the pitching staff to reset, gives the coaching staff an additional planning window with the Ponce injury still fresh, and ensures that Cease, the most consequential start of the week, happens with a full night's preparation rather than a cross-country travel day compressed into hours. There is also an argument that playing a day game on Friday, with the charged atmosphere of Rate Field's home opener and Murakami expected to be introduced to the Southside crowd in full ceremony, creates a more interesting competitive environment than what Thursday's weather would have produced. Baseball is better played in dry conditions, and this series, given the narratives embedded in it, deserves to be played in conditions that let both teams show what they are. The Blue Jays will play 4 games in Chicago and then head into the rest of April carrying whatever record they build here. The White Sox will finally open Rate Field, hear their crowd for the first time in 2026, and test whether Murakami's electricity can ignite something broader than one player's historic first week. This series was going to be compelling before the storm rolled through. Now, with an extra day's pressure and a home opener's worth of ceremony attached to it, it figures to be one of the more watchable early season series on the calendar. This is Blue Jays Focus. We will have complete coverage of the rescheduled opener Friday, with all eyes on Dylan Cease making his return to Rate Field.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.